Hey everyone, and welcome to the video. So today what I want to go over in this video is basically the reason for me switching from my recently purchased Panasonic Lumix GH5 over to my current camera, which is the Sony A7S3, and basically the main reasons for that. So coming into the Panasonic side of things first, the main reason I actually went for that particular camera was basically the 10-bit recording. So when you actually look at the specs of that camera on paper, the A7S3 aside, it probably blows everything else out of the water. But obviously the Achilles heel of that particular camera is autofocus. Now, for the YouTube side of things, that wasn't actually too much of an issue for me. So most of the videos that I've actually made with that particular camera, aside from one which I actually scrapped, and that was my mistake because I got the white balance wrong, most of the other videos I was able to do everything that I wanted to do, and basically it just gave me this, as you can see right now, a little bit of extra depth in terms of bokeh. But there was two main things that were eating away at me when it comes to the GH5. So the first of those is autofocus, and the reason that's an issue for me is because this camera isn't basically just for YouTube. Yes, YouTube's going to be the main use for the camera, and it would have been the same main use for the GH5 as well. The other side of it is any of the videos that I like to make of basically just around the house with kids and things like that. Obviously the kids have been in lockdown for a long time now. UK, for those of you who aren't aware, we've pretty much been in lockdown since last February. So it's been over a year where kids have been in and out of schools. Even when they did go back to schools, it was literally for like a month or two, and then they broke up again. So obviously just trying to keep everybody sane, it just helps to have a little bit of fun and basically just make some videos of any of the schoolwork, because obviously that's the other side of things, where normally all that work that my daughter's doing out of school, I won't get a chance to see it. And even if I went into school, they have silly rules where you're not allowed cameras, even when they're performing in plays or anything like that. So normally I wouldn't get a chance to make a video of any of that kind of stuff of her learning, and also just generally when she's playing. Now, as I say, from the YouTube side of things, everything was perfect. So I could, even if I was having to use manual focus, I could get the job done. I could adapt it and make it work. The problem came when I was making videos, basically just general videos, and kids don't stay still. So trying to keep a 7-year-old and all her toys and everything in focus was not an easy task. And obviously the ideal solution would be to use all Panasonic lenses, which would be slightly better in terms of autofocus, but still not brilliant. Now, if we compare that to this, and we just see how instant the autofocus is on this. This is basically equivalent of smartphones, and that's basically why I've used iPhones for so long for video, just because they're reliable. I can rely on them and I don't need to think too much about it. Once you hit record, you just want to go with the flow and just make that recording. So that was the first issue, the autofocus. The second issue with that particular camera was both a positive and a negative. So I actually mentioned in the video where I originally decided to keep it, that micro four thirds, that kind of worked in its benefit, because what was happening was I was able to buy lenses for virtually nothing. So if you think about the Sigma lenses, f1.4 Sigma lenses for £200-300, compare that to the one that I've got on my A7S3, which is a 24mm f1.4, and this one cost me around 500, and the most expensive one for the micro four thirds I believe was four something. So, and this is basically the cheaper option. I've also got a 24-70 f2.8 that will be coming, and that's basically £1,000. And then the other one that I really want is the f1.2. I believe it's a 30mm or 33mm, something like that. But this is obviously the 24, so this is plenty wide enough. And this is probably the perfect lens for this kind of talking head video. I'm hoping that with the 1.2, it's not so cropped in that it kind of negates that usability of it. But even for general use and stuff around the house, I'm sure I'll be able to find use cases for it. So obviously the fact that the lenses were cheap was brilliant for the Micro Four Thirds, but the problem came in with these, basically the crop. So essentially, by it being Micro Four Thirds, whatever lens I was purchasing, so this is a 24mm, on that this would have been a 48, and it almost became impossible without using the original kit lens, which is, I believe, was something like a 20 to 60, I want to say, something in that range. So realistically that was a 40 or 48 through to 120 lens, which means that in order to get anything that's actually widescreen, essentially you have to go and get a fisheye lens. And once you're going down that route of getting fisheye lenses, and you've still not got the benefit of basically what I've got right now, which is with these lights in the background, you can see how much bokeh balls that you're actually getting. Whereas with that, yeah, you got a little bit, and it's obviously it's miles better than you get on any phone because you can choose which lens you want to put on it. But it wasn't like this. Obviously originally I kind of looked at the pricing, looked at everything else, and I thought keep the GH5 for a couple of years and then upgrade once the newer generation of cameras. And obviously the way Sony are going, they're absolutely killing the scene with their cameras. A1's just been released. And whilst I was tempted, that is way overkill for my needs. Basically, even the A7S3 realistically is overkill, but once you've seen 4K 120 and you've seen some of the functionality with the S and Q modes on this particular camera, it'll make sense in terms of why I went for this. So obviously the GH5, I believe all in was costing me, with all of these kind of, with the additional batteries, the chargers, the memory card, with all of that kind of stuff, I believe the GH5 was costing me somewhere in the region of, say, 1900, let's just round it up to 2000. So the A7S3, the body alone cost me 3000, and then the lenses on top. So this particular lens, what I'll do is I'll pull it up. Okay, yeah, so this particular lens cost me 600. And the other lens that I want to get, which is the 24-70, is currently listed as 1049. And I believe the f1.2 is even more expensive than that. I believe that's somewhere in the region of £1200. Obviously, considering what you're getting with an f1.2 lens, and the reason basically I went for the Sigma rather than the G Master was, firstly, it's half the price, pretty much, and secondly, from my experience using them with the Panasonic, as well as virtually every review out there, most of them will say that with the Sigmas you're probably getting about 95% of what you're getting from the G Master. I believe the autofocus performance probably will be better with the G Master, but you're talking half the price at least, if not more of a reduction compared to the G Master. Hopefully somewhere down the line I might pick up a G Master, or if anybody wants to actually send me one to test out, just to compare against the Sigma lenses. But as for everything that I've used it so far, the Sigmas perform perfectly, like literally perfectly. Like that is as quick as basically any smartphone out there in terms of autofocus performance. And obviously then you still have the sharpness and the clarity and everything about them. Yeah, it's a massive lens. I'll try and insert a clip of just how big and how heavy this lens is, but yeah, it's not a light lens, but that's what you get with the wider angle lenses. So yeah, that was the main thing. I kind of looked at it and I thought to myself, do I really want to hold on to the GH5 for 2 years and have that sort of dread in the back of my mind where I'm thinking that I've settled for something, whilst the GH5 is a very good camera, and I'd actually recommend most people that are either starting YouTube or looking for a really versatile camera. The GH5 is actually perfect for that, and for the money I don't think you'll actually get anything anywhere close to it. But obviously in order to improve on that, I had to go up probably 2 brackets in terms of pricing. So it was originally between the GH5 and the A7Siii. The A7 III was never really consideration because it wasn't really, basically I need a flip out screen, I want all of these benefits that you get with the newer cameras, and basically the A7S III was the one that I wanted all along. And I just thought to myself, I don't want to be making or thinking further down the line that basically I've made a mistake by settling for the GH5, as opposed to just paying the extra and buying this. Now this should have me set for a good few years at least. And the good thing about obviously these kind of digital cameras is further down the line, if I did want to upgrade, I could either move this to a B camera, or I could basically sell this on, and even the lenses and everything, because it's full frame, I know that they're going to work perfectly with whatever I get. Sony is probably the brand that I'm going to end up staying with, simply for their autofocus speeds. That's something that I believe on all of their new cameras is basically bang on. So that's basically the biggest thing when it comes to this sort of amateur photography and videography, if you like, because I won't call myself a professional by any stretch of the imagination. So me as an amateur and somebody who's still learning, I need my equipment to do the work for me. Hence why the iPhones are perfect, and why I'd recommend smartphones for most people who are just starting out wanting to make good quality videos. But this obviously gives me a sort of look, and obviously it gives me functionality where right now you can see I've got it loaded up on my MacBook Pro. I can have this on my iPhone. I can have it basically set up so then I can see everything. And essentially what it's doing is it's giving me so much more flexibility in terms of making sure the shot is composed correctly, but also just being able to start and stop recordings without having to actually go near the camera. Obviously this is quite a wide lens, so I'm not actually that far away from the camera. I'm probably about a meter away from the camera. If you remember from my GH5 videos, I was almost what, 1.5 meters to 2 meters away from the camera in order to get this same kind of image, if you like, this sort of framing. And as I say, that was one of the things that actually worked against the GH5, the fact that every lens that you put on it is going to be zoomed in that much more. So if you did want to use any zoom lenses, obviously it makes it a lot easier, because virtually every lens that you put on there, if you put on a 70 to 100 for example, all of a sudden that's not a 70 to 100, you've got a 140 to 200 lens, which is obviously quite zoomed in. So in terms of zoom capabilities, it makes it a lot easier, and the lens itself will be a lot smaller. This isn't even a zoom lens, obviously this is a wide angle lens and it's this big. So obviously once you get into the zoom lenses for full frame, then you're talking much bigger size. But obviously the other sort of aspect to it, in terms of choosing this over APS-C or Micro Four Thirds based, is low light performance. And that's something where I've made videos the last couple of days just of kids playing, just testing around the house and everything, and it absolutely blows your mind in terms of what this camera can see. It literally can see in the dark. And if I compare that to videos that I've had to make on the iPhone in the past, where I have to choose which room I make a video in, depending on how much light that particular room has, that's not even a consideration anymore. Making videos in my kitchen where I have the GU10 spotlights, you get that flickering, whereas on this obviously you can just dial your shutter speed, and basically you can get rid of that. Obviously it's not ideal, I'd still want to shoot at 1/50, which is what I'm doing currently, but you have the option, whereas on these kind of things you don't get that option. So yeah, that's basically my reasoning behind it. Obviously it's quite a big investment. You're jumping from a £2,000 investment up to the A7S3. Once I've got the two lenses, will probably be costing me roughly around the 4,800 mark. I've had to swap out the memory card as well. I did go for just a normal V90 because the formats that I'm going to use with it work perfectly fine on the V90, so it doesn't make sense for me to actually go any higher and basically get the CF Express cards, because I'm not going to be using the all-I format. So basically there's no point in me getting those, aside from obviously the speed in terms of transferring it. But even these, I've transferred quite large files, a 12-minute 422 10-bit 24 frames per second 4K video, and that transferred in no time. So in terms of transfer speeds and everything, yes, they would be faster, but this one's good enough. But it was twice the price with half the memory in comparison to the one that I actually had with my GH5. I did check for basically 512 gig V90 cards, but I couldn't find any on Amazon, and basically I wasn't going to risk ordering from anybody else at this moment in time. Yeah, that's all my reasoning. Now I will have another video coming up on where I actually purchased the camera from, and I'll go into more depth in terms of why I'll be making that video in that video. So obviously if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe to the channel. If you have enjoyed this video and it's been helpful, then I'd really appreciate if you give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already done so, also hit that bell icon down below. That way you will be notified whenever I upload a new video. I am aiming for roughly 2 to 3 videos per week, but we'll have to wait and see how things go. And other than that, thanks very much for watching.